All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you from, as usual, a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Bill Rice, who is just outside Detroit in Michigan. How are you doing, Bill?
I'm doing wonderful.
Great. And Bill is a seasoned entrepreneur, marketing expert with over 20 years experience in lead generation, digital marketing, and business growth. Your journey began in counterespionage as an Air Force officer before transitioning into the business world. As a founder of Kaleidico and Bill Rice Strategy Group, he specialized in helping fintech companies develop effective lead gen strategies and optimizing their sales operations. And that's what I want to talk about today was creating predictable revenues. Like, you have a proven framework for B2B lead generation. And let's face it, Bill, here's something I've never heard anybody say ever, probably, but certainly not in the last few years is, hey, John, we've got so many leads, I just don't know what to do with them, right? Normally what we're hearing now is leads are so hard to come by. Lead gen is more difficult than it's ever been. So first off, Bill, why do you think that's the perception out there, or maybe the reality for a lot of people, that leads are so hard to come by?
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with just not taking control of your lead flow. I mean, I think that's the biggest part of that. I think so often as sales teams, individual contributors, we just kind of sit back and have this expectation of marketing to fill,
Hmm.
our pipelines full of leads. And really, what I advocate for a lot of the folks I work with is to take some accountability. Easier than ever has it's just so much. You have more accessibility to
Right.
your audience and to your potential ICPs, and now with AI, which we can talk about a little bit, a lot of these things that normally you would have to rely on marketing or maybe you didn't have the skills for
Hmm.
are now sitting on your desktop. And so I really advocate for taking some accountability, and just taking control of your lead flow, and that's going to give you some predictability that you probably never experienced before.
Yeah, and I think a good point you made at the beginning there was the sitting back and waiting, because I feel like a number of years ago we had this whole inbound movement, and it was all, everything was inbound and content drive inbound, and I think it lulled a lot of salespeople into a false sense of security and thinking, okay, well, if everything is inbound, then like I'll just sit back and wait for these great leads to come in, and I think a lot of people lost the art or the will to prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the flaw there is, all of our markets go through some natural
Hmm.
cyclical movements, business cycles, and those sorts of things. And so, marketing for the most part, is reliant on essentially sucking in or acquiring the demand that's in the market. So when
Yeah.
that demand dissipates, all of a sudden your pipeline dries up. And again, you may have forgotten how to prospect, or you don't have that consistent movement in your activities, and so you just dry up, and that's never fun when the tide goes out.
No, it's not. It's not indeed. So let's talk about your framework for B2B lead generation.
Yeah, yeah. Again, multi-part. I really focus on, and I have a new book coming out very soon called Sales Team of One. And even though we're often in a larger team and at a enterprise scale,
Hmm.
I do want to bring the accountability sort of closer to the individual contributors. So the framework starts by, as a salesperson, generally, even though we kind of move around sometimes from place to place, generally there's probably some domain that you
Hmm.
land in. So it starts with building some domain expertise. So
Right.
when I am doing that prospecting, and I actually am engaging with my ICP, I have some commensurate level of domain knowledge alongside of them. So I want some domain knowledge, and then I want to start building my own personal audience and my
Hmm.
own personal visibility. That's become easier and easier with social media, LinkedIn, and now with AI, you can actually build some pretty high end collateral
Hmm.
and material to put out in there. So I want to start with that. Again, taking accountability. I want to have my own domain knowledge, and I want to have my own ability to go out there and build an audience and build some of that visibility in the market as an expert
Yeah.
alongside of my ICP.
And that's just what's really interesting about that, Bill, is these are things that are completely within the control of the individual salesperson. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for your company to train you. You don't have to wait to get direction. I mean, if you, as you said, if you have some domain expertise or there's an area that you're particularly interested in, then if you invest the time and if you're curious enough, and I think curiosity is a big factor, if you're
Yeah.
curious enough to invest the time to get deep in there and then to build up your own profile. I mean, these are things completely within your own control.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm of a certain age. I mean, we used to say back in the day, what made us valuable was our Rolodex. We're kind
Mhm.
of back there. The
Yeah.
only sort of difference is nobody knows what a Rolodex is
Yeah,
anymore. And kind of
exactly.
the modern Rolodex is your audience, right? What you've acquired and what you've built some attention
Mhm,
for yourself, and so I think they are equivalent. So not
mhm.
only is it important for you to do, it also raises your value as a sales talent acquisition, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, I mean, and obviously then when you engage with, prospects or people, you want to be able to engage as a business equal, not as somebody just, like, pitching something to them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just on a recent podcast and we were talking about kind of the importance of brand. So
Mhm,
if you're the company that you're working for or that you're doing sales for has a good brand, and the executives and the founders have a good personal brand
mhm.
out into the marketplace, we all know as salespeople that makes it easier when I approach people. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of Tesla or I've heard
Mhm.
of whatever the name brand is," but there's nothing that precludes you from being that brand.
Yeah,
So I like to take it down to the individual sales level and say, go ahead, get started, build your brand.
yeah.
Again, makes you more valuable. And second, when that email lands in the inbox, they've heard of Bill Rice.
Right, right. And what's the next part of the framework?
Yeah, from there, I think it's really important to have mechanisms to bring in and capture those leads. So
Mhm,
hopefully, again, this is something that the organization provides, but more and more, it's easy enough to build your own forms, your own captures,
mhm.
bring that in. I do love inbound, even though we're
Sure.
prospecting. I like to acquire an inbound lead. So this can be something as simple as type form and give away a piece of sales collateral that you did with some AI to help
Mhm.
you kind of up your marketing game. But I think it's really important to have a capture mechanism so that you can, one, show that expertise, two, capture some real intent, because as we're prospecting, there's a lot of people we're talking to that don't have intent.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
do want to sort of filter through that. So that's the next step, is to really create some mechanism, some capture mechanism, so that can verify the intent that goes beyond just looking at my open rates on my emails.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and I think that's super important, particularly as nowadays, as you can't even rely on open rates on emails because, the spam filters and all these things have become so sophisticated that things can look like opens. You can get all very excited, but it turns out it's just a spam filter.
Well, and the beauty is you can use it in multiple channels too, because
Mhm,
we're more and more, I am advocating sort of a combination of LinkedIn and email. So
mhm,
email is still supreme in a lot of ways, and even
mhm,
outbound, calls and voicemails and that sort of thing. All three of those channels, voicemails, LinkedIn, email, you can drive back to whatever that mechanism is, whatever that piece of content
mhm.
that will verify that intent and give you some better feedback than some of these third party mechanisms that no longer work properly.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and having a consistent process obviously is very, very important. Like how you capture the leads and how you follow up on them and etc. What's the next phase?
Yeah, then after that, it all goes back to your, stomping ground, the CRM itself.
Mhm.
I think it's so important inside of that CRM to have some automation, right? As
Yeah.
they show that intent, or to give you some visibility into intent and movement within that pipeline. The other thing that I think is really evolving, and will be something that's going to be more and more accessible to individual sales contributors, is the ability to leverage AI
Mhm.
to do sort of micro campaigns. So I'm doing within some of my systems. I will actually go to an individual, because usually the kind of the high intent or the
Mhm.
kind of the high value clients, there may only be a dozen or so of those, but I'll go in and I'll create, using AI to help me along, a micro sequence just for that individual, right? So
Right.
if I have 10 or 12 sort of named accounts, they're going to get personal sequences that now I can build again using AI,
Mhm.
taking a look at some of the past history inside of that CRM, and I can build a very specific personalized micro sequence. And so again, AI can help me do some of those things more efficiently. And then again, a lot of those kind of age leads or things that are deep in the pipeline. It's amazing. I just launched another one the other day, and I probably got about a 10% response rate on
Right.
stuff that was just dead, and I had
Mhm.
lost all contact or hope. And so it's nice to launch out something like that. So follow up inside of your CRM, super critical.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, automation and using the tools there and using AI to make so basically to make it efficient, remove all the rote and routine work and use it as a way of helping you get to, be more intentional in your outreach, hyper personalization, as you said. I mean, these are all things that thankfully today, CRMs like ours will do for you. You've got the automation engine, you've got AI built in, all of
Yeah.
that good stuff, and it does really elevate then the salesperson says, okay, you've got all of this, you've got all this insight, everything's automated, now it's over to you.
Yeah, exactly. The little thing I like to always say when I'm kind of talking to people about this concept in particular
Hmm.
is let systems work leads
Hmm.
and let people talk to people.
Yeah.
So ideally, and again, this is a perfect world, but I want to get to a point where I, as a salesperson, am spending most of my times on Zoom calls,
Yeah.
on calls, and actually interacting with people. And that extends all the way to sales directors. I want to
Hmm.
use and leverage all of these systems to work leads, to help look at my team, and then even spend as a sales director more of my time interacting and coaching my team and the
Yeah.
people instead of banging on reports and trying to figure out what the heck's going on inside the CRM.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most critical points there is, for sales leaders and sales managers, and that is to be able to free up the time to focus on coaching, to focus on helping, early stage qualification, to make not to be where a lot of sales managers are, and that's at the late stages trying to push things over the line, for their salespeople.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and if you have your CRM set up properly, create generating the reports automatically or whatever, then that allows you to do that coaching. And I think that's for me, sales managers greatest revenue multiplier if you can get it right.
Oh, absolutely. And I really hope, as more and more of this AI kind of penetrates inside of the systems and the software that we use and that
Hmm.
sort of thing, I think there's a natural tendency for us to raise the expectations on just doing more activity
Hmm.
instead of saying, hey, let's take some of this margin and let's invest it back in our people.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping as that productivity increases, the activity level can be sort of farmed out to AI, that the humans in the system start to interact more. That being salespeople talking to
Mhm.
prospects for sure, but also internally inside of the team, those individual team members collaborating and sales leadership investing in the human connectivity there. Again, that's going to
Yeah.
bring the multiplier higher.
And I agree with you. And obviously the sales and marketing alignment piece is very critical as well. Obviously, I mean today people interact with your brand in so many different ways that it really does spread to all parts of the organization. But you're right. I mean, I think that internal communication is something that a lot of people overlook.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, marketing alignment. I mean, we're seeing more and more of this, particularly in the B2B world, is where those teams are just sort of co-located
Hmm.
and becoming, a revenue team,
Yeah.
if you will. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. So as the margin builds, hopefully, again, the human element and the
Mhm.
creativity gets, more of a showcase, so we can really make those systems work for us.
And what another part? Do you have more of your framework?
No, I mean, at that point, you're kind of going to, to the closing
Mhm.
phases of that, and so that's we really focus on that. Again, creating predictable revenue.
Mhm.
Everything starts with just having the opportunities available, and then how you work those opportunities in the systems and the CRMs that you use. That's what really brings them to the closing table. After that, like we've been talking about, that's a human to human
Yeah.
experience. Usually, the pen to paper and those closing moments, and so hopefully you get more time to spend on those closing phases, which are human to human.
Yeah. And how important is it that you have your sales process well defined, and in each stage of it well defined and consistent? Because that's another thing. One of the things that undoes predictable revenue is when you have your sales process too loose, or people get to interpret what's so. Maybe you and I have identical opportunities. I put mine in stage two, you put yours in stage three.
Yep.
Guess what? One of us is wrong and the forecast is off.
Yeah, I'm still amazed when I, collaborate and work with clients and stuff. You open up a sales system, and there is no pipeline definition, and there are
Mhm.
no statuses inside that pipeline. And so my first question is like, how does your sales team know how to get a deal closed, right?
Right.
Because within any organization, there are a few steps or phases that hopefully you've learned are necessary as you go into the
Yeah.
particular market that you're going into, or even within your own organization, like, what things need to get done, what approvals need to happen, what sign-offs need to be made if we, adjust the standard deal and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it's super critical to first and foremost really sit down and understand what that straight line looks like,
Mhm.
to kind of the perfect deal, and then all of the exceptions. So it's much
Yeah.
like, building code for a CRM, right?
Yep.
There's the happy path, and then there's the exceptions, and hopefully all of those are accounted for, and then that's what makes it work, sort of smoothly, and again, predictably.
Yeah, and the other thing, that you mentioned a number of times is obviously freeing up the salesperson to do that human part.
Yeah.
And I think we're coming off the back of an era where, people were very hands off, people stayed at an arm's length, all of that. It may be harder to get to people today because of all the barriers there, but I do think there is a greater desire on behalf of buyers and prospects, and that is to engage with humans, and to have that trust element.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I see, and I was just talking with a client the other day. One of the top producing, and the highest ROI channel, and it was kind of surprising to us. We just sort of looked at the data and we're like, "Wow, we haven't done a lot of these, but they are the highest ROI, the
Mhm.
top returning," and those were conferences.
Mm.
And so again, face-to-face interaction. A lot of these were pipeline deals, that as he went to conferences, he was able to engage with and kind of take that human element to the point where it felt, real,
Mhm.
and comfort and trust was easier to acquire. So now we're actually starting to kind of, generally we've been a lot of digital focus and again building the brand and that sort of thing. But now we're starting to think again, like, how do we prepare for conferences?
Yeah.
How do we get top performers on the stage? That's like the best filter and the best way, to get in front of 100 people instead of working, one at a
Mhm.
time. And then the second part, that we're teaching on conferences that has really proven out is all of the work is done before the conference, because essentially you're trying to fill your schedule. So when
Yep.
you're at the conference, you're super efficient because the person chatting you up at the bar is probably not your ICP, and
Yep.
your ICP has already booked their schedule because they're coming to the conference and they want to be efficient. So those two components, if you can pull off the stage, that's great. But the second one is to really realize if you're going to invest, $3,000, $5,000 in a conference, the work is done before the conference, before you hop on the plane, to attend that conference. And so, again, like you said, human to human, becoming a real, sort of factor
Mhm.
in top performers.
And just on that point, then, you're saying like prepping for the conference again. That's a great example of, you can use technology, you can use automated processes, you can use all of these things to do like a proper campaign before you go. And
Yes.
so that you fill your time. Yeah. Otherwise, you're one of those people in the exhibition hall standing at your booth, like desperately trying to kind of grab anybody who'll come by just to look like you're you're doing
Yeah.
something.
Well, I'll tell you another little secret that we've been, using pretty effectively. Even if you're not attending the conference,
Hmm.
if you have ICPs that belong at that conference, reaching out, mentioning the conference, reviewing agendas, building sequences around the agendas, the hot topics at those conferences, and then reaching out to your pipeline and say, "Hey, are you planning on attending this? I noticed this particular concept or agenda
Hmm.
item or whatever. Is this on your roadmap?" the sense of FOMO around that will pull people that aren't even going to the conference that are interested in hearing what you have to say. There's just something about, and again, it's a little bit more of a nuanced
Yeah.
strategy, but again, reaching out to the people that should be at the conference, reflecting on a conference agenda that's been vetted against what's important to
Mhm.
your domain, your industry, and then referencing that in your cold outreach has yielded a lot of responses.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, and like I said, you have the tools to do it now. You have all the ways of finding this information. It's all there. It just goes back to kind of what you said at the beginning, Bill, is that yeah, there are things that fall on the organization, but ultimately, it's the individual themselves and how much work they're prepared to put in, how disciplined they're prepared to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more and more data's available. I can level up my skills on the marketing side, the writing side,
Mhm.
and then again, tools like your CRM and CRMs in general are becoming more and more capable for you to get the automation. There's really no reason for you not to be sort of a sales team of one and top
Mhm.
performers. They're doing a lot of things. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily wanting to even allow themselves to kind of be subject to some larger organizational marketing engine. They want to make sure that that commission check's going to come in a predictable way, and so they're taking more and more control where they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you, Bill. This has been great. All Bill's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I help both on the B2C and the B2B side, sales teams, one, build a predictable lead generation mechanism, and then ultimately get those sales processes behind the scenes ready to turn those leads into closed deals.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, go check it out. There's always, as I said at the outset, I still have yet to have somebody come to me and say, John, I'm just so overwhelmed with leads. I don't know what to do. So until that day comes, yeah, you need to check out Bill and people like that. So thanks again, Bill. Thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon. Thank you.